My name is Jennifer Dorsey. I'm 32 years old, and until 2 months ago, I was the Director of Strategic Accounts at my family's mid-size manufacturing company. The same company I helped triple in size over 8 relentless years. Now I'm unemployed by choice. And before you imagine shouting matches or slammed doors, let me clear something up. I didn't yell. I didn't accuse anyone. I didn't even pack my desk. I stood up, nodded once, and walked out of the conference room while my mother, my younger brother, and the rest of the board watched in stunned silence. But that wasn't the beginning. That was the end of a very long lie. Let me rewind. Back to when I still believed that loyalty counted. Back when I thought results spoke louder than charm. Back when I assumed my family saw me as more than a safety net they could lean on and then discard. Our company, Dorsey Precision Solutions, was founded by my grandfather in the late 70s. He started it in a garage with a few secondhand lathes and a single agricultural equipment contract. Over decades, it grew into a respected regional supplier. When my father took over, he expanded into aerospace components and stabilized the operation until his health began to fail. That's when my mother, Denise Dorsey, stepped in. Denise wasn't a placeholder CEO. She had an MBA, sharp instincts, and a reputation for being ruthless in negotiations. I admired her. I still do in complicated ways. But she has one blind spot she never acknowledged: my younger brother. Brandon Dorsey is 4 years younger than me. He's polished, attractive, and magnetic in a room full of executives. Investors love him. Cameras love him. He has a smile that makes people assume competence before he's said a word. And to be fair, he understands optics better than anyone I know. What he doesn't understand is the work. While Brandon talked about vision and culture, I lived in the trenches. I handled client escalations at midnight, rewrote contracts over weekends, memorized production limits, supplier quirks, and margin thresholds. I knew which floor supervisors could solve problems and which ones needed hand-holding. I knew where every bottleneck lived. For years, our dynamic worked. I built the machine. Brandon marketed the machine. My mother let it happen because the numbers were good, until they weren't good enough for her ambition. The shift started quietly. My reports began including Brandon as a CC. Meetings I used to lead suddenly happened without me. Marketing alignment, my mother said. Nothing operational. Then came the biggest contract in our company's history, a 3-year deal with a defense subcontractor that would double our production volume. I secured it. I spent 6 weekends traveling, pitching, revising scopes. When we signed, I walked into the office exhausted and proud, and saw a banner. Another big win for Dorsey Precision. The photo featured Brandon smiling next to the client representative I had personally introduced him to less than a week earlier. I swallowed it. Then came the leadership retreat. 4 invites went out. My mother, Brandon, the CFO, a new HR director Brandon personally recommended. I wasn't invited. When I asked why, my mother smiled tightly and said Brandon needs space to step up. You understand. I didn't argue. I kept working. But something inside me shifted quietly, irrevocably. The announcement came on a Monday morning. Name cards lined the conference table. Brandon sat at the head. I was 4 seats down. He stood, smiled, and said, "Effective immediately. I'll be stepping in as Director of Strategic Accounts. Jennifer has done foundational work, and we're grateful. She'll transition into a support role." Support role. I looked at my mother. She didn't meet my eyes. That night, I didn't sleep. The next morning, I didn't go to work. I packed my essentials before sunrise and walked out without a word. And that was the moment everything began. The first thing that surprised me after I walked out wasn't relief. It was the silence. No frantic calls. No "where are you" texts. No emergency meeting requests. For 8 years, my phone had never gone quiet. Not really. There was always a client question, a vendor issue, a production snag that somehow only I could untangle, and now nothing. The absence felt louder than any confrontation ever could. I told myself that was fine, that it meant they were respecting my space, that maybe my mother would call later once things cooled down, once she realized how far she'd pushed me. I clung to that idea longer than I should have. At home, my boyfriend, Daniel Carter, noticed the shift immediately. Daniel has always been observant in a way that isn't intrusive. He doesn't pry. He just watches and waits. "You're home early," he said that first afternoon, glancing up from the kitchen as I dropped my keys into the bowl by the door. "I'm home," I corrected. He didn't ask follow-up questions. He just nodded. poured me a glass of water, and set it on the counter like it was the most natural thing in the world. That small kindness nearly broke me. The first few days passed in a strange blur. I slept more than I had in years. I cooked actual meals. I went on long walks in the middle of the day, something I hadn't done since college. On the surface, it looked like healing, but underneath something was hollowing me out. By day 4, the truth crept in. I wasn't resting, I was drifting. My entire adult identity had been wrapped around Dorsey Precision Solutions. Not just the job, the responsibility. Being the one people depended on. Being the calm voice in the chaos. Without that, I didn't know where to put my energy or my worth. Then LinkedIn reminded me I'd been replaced. Brandon posted a photo at my old desk. Same whiteboard behind him, same coffee mug I'd bought for the department years ago. His caption read, "Excited to lead our strategic accounts team into a bold new era. Let's innovate." The comments came fast. "So proud of you. Born leader. Fresh energy is exactly what the company needed." One person even tagged me. "Big shoes to fill. Hope Jennifer helps him get up to speed." I closed the app before my hands could start shaking. That night after Daniel fell asleep, I opened my laptop. Out of habit, more than intention, I logged into the company drive. My access hadn't been revoked. Brandon hadn't even thought of it. What I found made my stomach drop. Folders duplicated. Files mislabeled. 3 different versions of the same contract circulating internally, each with different numbers, different timelines, different specs. One promised delivery schedules that were physically impossible. Another underestimated costs by double digits. The third, the one marked final, still referenced last year's prototype. So that's why the Falcon account was pulling back. I leaned back in my chair, hands over my face, a bitter understanding settling in. The machine I'd built was already grinding itself apart. Still, I didn't reach out. I didn't warn anyone. I told myself it wasn't my problem anymore. 2 days later, my phone rang. Marcus, one of our senior floor managers. "Hey," he said quietly. "You didn't hear this from me, but people are leaving. 2 junior PMs quit. Morale's bad. Really bad." I closed my eyes. "And the CFO?" I asked. Gone quiet, like distancing quiet. When the call ended, I sat there staring at the wall, realizing something terrifying and validating at the same time. They hadn't just sidelined me. They'd removed the keystone. That weekend, my mother texted, "Sunday dinner, just family." I didn't answer right away. I already knew I'd go, not because I wanted reconciliation, but because I needed to see it with my own eyes, to understand whether I'd imagined the shift or if it had truly happened. When Sunday came, I walked back into the house I'd grown up in. Same lemon-scented candle, same dining table. Brandon was already seated, scrolling on his phone like nothing had changed. "Look who decided to show," he said with a grin that didn't reach his eyes. We ate in silence. When my mother finally spoke, it wasn't to ask how I'd been. "Things have been bumpy," she said carefully. "Bumpy," I repeated. Brandon jumped in. "The Falcon issue was just a miscommunication." "You sent 3 different scopes," I said calmly. "All wrong." His face flushed. "You're spying now. You never cut my access." My mother sighed. "Brandon is learning. He's under pressure." "So was I said, "for 8 years." They didn't deny it. That's when I understood something painful and permanent. I hadn't been erased by accident. I'd been replaced deliberately. And the silence afterward wasn't respect. It was relief. I left my mother's house without raising my voice. That was the strangest part of all. I'd imagined this moment so many times, storming out, finally saying the things I'd swallowed for years, demanding recognition, demanding fairness. But when it actually happened, I felt empty, like I'd already mourned the loss of something long before it officially died. In the car, my hands rested on the steering wheel long after I'd turned the engine off. The house lights glowed behind me, warm and familiar, but I didn't look back. I already knew there was nothing waiting for me there anymore. At home, Daniel was sitting on the couch with a book open on his lap. He looked up when I came in, took one look at my face, and closed it without a word. "You don't have to explain," he said gently. I sat beside him, leaned my head against his shoulder, and for the first time since I walked out of that conference room, I let myself cry. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quiet tears slipping down my cheeks, soaking into the fabric of his shirt. "They don't miss me," I said finally. "They miss what I did." Daniel didn't rush to reassure me. He didn't say they were wrong or that I deserved better, even though both were true. He just nodded like someone who understood that sometimes validation hurts more than criticism. The next morning, my phone lit up. A former vendor. Then an engineer I hadn't spoken to in months. Then a procurement contact from Falcon. Each message was cautious, polite, almost hesitant. Hey, Jennifer, hope you're well. Heard you're no longer with Dorsey. Would love to get your thoughts on something unofficially. Unofficially. They weren't asking for my loyalty. They were asking for my competence. I didn't respond right away. I wasn't ready to step into anything new yet. But the messages kept coming quietly, stacking up like proof I hadn't imagined my value after all. Then Brandon texted, "We should talk. Mom's worried." I stared at the screen, a bitter laugh slipping out before I could stop it. Worried now. After the contracts, the chaos, the dinner that wasn't about me at all. Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet. Not at the house, not at the office. A neutral cafe halfway between my apartment and the industrial park where Dorsey Precision still stood like a monument to everything I'd built and lost. My mother arrived first. Brandon came 5 minutes late. "We'll get straight to it," my mother said, folding her hands like this was a board meeting instead of a family conversation. "We want you back." I waited. In an advisory capacity, Brandon added quickly, "Just guidance. No title, no formal role. We need help stabilizing things." I blinked slowly. "You want me to fix the mess," I said, without undoing the decision that caused it. "It's not about titles," Brandon snapped. "It's about the company." "No," I said calmly. "It's about you keeping the spotlight while I do the work." My mother sighed, that familiar sound that used to mean compromise, but now just meant pressure. "Please, Jennifer, don't make this harder than it needs to be." I looked at her then, really looked, and I saw it clearly. She wasn't asking how I felt. She wasn't apologizing. She was managing a crisis. "I won't come back without my role," I said, "and I won't work for someone who took it from me." Brandon scoffed. "So you're really going to let everything burn just to prove a point?" I stood up. "This wasn't about proving a point," I said softly. "It was about being seen, and you still don't see me." Neither of them stopped me when I walked out. That afternoon, a new email landed in my inbox. From Falcon's procurement lead. "We're reviewing options. Would you be open to consulting independently?" I stared at the screen heart, pounding not with fear, but with clarity. They still needed me, just not my family. The envelope arrived on a Tuesday. It wasn't mailed. It was slid under my apartment door sometime between midnight and dawn. Thick, glossy, faintly perfumed, like someone wanted it to feel official and personal at the same time. No return address. Just my name typed neatly across the front. Jennifer Dorsey. For a moment, I didn't open it. I stood there barefoot in the hallway, coffee growing cold in my hand, a familiar pressure tightening in my chest. Something about the weight of the envelope told me this wasn't reconciliation. This was erasure. Inside was a single folded document on company letterhead. Internal HR update. Contractual status change. I read it once without absorbing the words, then again slower. By voluntarily vacating your position without notice, you have forfeited all performance bonuses, advisory entitlements, and deferred compensation for Q3 and Q4. Retroactively terminated. No severance. No acknowledgement of 8 years of growth. No signature from my mother. It was signed by Brandon. That was the moment something inside me cracked, not loudly, not dramatically. Just a clean, quiet break, like bone under pressure. I sat on the floor with my back against the door, the paper shaking in my hands, my mind racing through every late night, every weekend flight, every crisis I'd absorbed without complaint because family, because legacy, because I believed that at the end of it all, I mattered. They weren't just pushing me out. They were rewriting the story to make me the villain who abandoned ship. For a few hours, I let myself believe it. I didn't eat. I didn't move. I scrolled through old emails, old presentations, old pitch decks, proof of a woman who sounded confident, capable, respected. The version of me in those files felt like someone else entirely. Daniel came home that evening and found me still sitting there. He didn't ask what happened. He knelt, took the letter from my hands, read it once, and placed it face down on the table. "They don't get to define you," he said simply. I wanted to believe him. I wasn't there yet. The next morning, I forced myself outside. No plan, just movement. I walked until my legs ached and ended up at a small coffee shop I used to love, brick walls, chipped mugs, the kind of place that didn't rush you. I opened my laptop and stared at a blank document. For the first time in years, there was no agenda, no approval needed, no one waiting on deliverables. That's when it hit me. What if I didn't rebuild inside their system? What if I built something else? My inbox chimed. A reply from Falcon. "We'd like to retain you for a 90-day advisory period. Rate negotiable." I blinked, read it again. They weren't asking for favors. They were offering respect. I typed back with steady hands. "Happy to help. Let's discuss scope." 10 minutes later, my phone rang. By the end of the call, I had my answer. This wasn't the bottom. It was the floor. And I was about to stand up. The first invoice I sent under my own name felt unreal. I stared at it for a long time before hitting send, half expecting some invisible authority to step in and tell me I wasn't allowed, that I was skipping steps, that I hadn't earned this without a corporate letterhead backing me up. But no one stopped me. No alarms went off. The world didn't collapse. Falcon paid within 5 days. No haggling, no passive-aggressive emails, just a clean confirmation and a short note from their procurement lead thanking me for the clarity of my recommendations. Clarity. I'd forgotten what it felt like to be appreciated for exactly what I brought to the table, without qualifiers, without politics. For the first few weeks, I worked from that same coffee shop, same corner seat by the window, same chipped mug. I reviewed specs, flagged risks, corrected timelines that never should have made it past draft stage. Every suggestion was met with questions, not defensiveness. Every correction sparked discussion, not blame. At home, Daniel watched the change happen in real time. "You're different," he said one night as we cooked dinner together. "Lighter." "I don't feel like I'm asking permission anymore," I replied, realizing it was true as I said it. I still hadn't told my mother about Falcon. I hadn't told Brandon anything at all. I wasn't hiding. I just wasn't volunteering myself for judgment anymore. Then the messages started coming again. A vendor who'd quietly stopped working with Dorsey, a project manager who'd taken a break after the chaos, an engineer who wanted to know if I'd be open to collaborating someday. One message stood out. "If you ever build something of your own, I'd follow you." I didn't respond right away, but I saved it. A week later, I registered a business name, Redline Advisory Group. No press release, no announcement, just paperwork, a domain, and a single-page website I built over a weekend. Clean, direct, honest, what we do, who we help, how to reach us. When the site went live, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt calm. My first independent client outside Falcon came through word of mouth, then a second. Both former Dorsey vendors who wanted someone who understood the work without the chaos. By the end of the month, I wasn't just consulting. I was building. One afternoon, Marcus texted me again. Hypothetically, he wrote, "If you were to start something real, stable, would you need people?" I didn't hesitate this time. "Yes." His reply came instantly. "Then I know at least 5 who'd listen." That night, as Daniel and I sat on the balcony watching the city lights flicker on, I told him everything about Redline, about the messages, about the idea forming quietly but stubbornly in my mind. "So you're not rebuilding what you lost," he said after a moment. "You're replacing it." "No," I corrected gently. "I'm outgrowing it." Inside, something settled into place. I wasn't waiting to be invited back anymore. I was creating something people wanted to belong to. And somewhere across the city, whether they realized it yet or not, my family was starting to feel the absence they'd once dismissed. The email from Brandon arrived just after midnight. It was longer than the others, less defensive, more frantic. He tried to sound professional, but desperation leaked through every line. "We're having issues with Falcon again. They're questioning deliverables and timelines. There's talk of legal review. I know things ended badly between us, but if you still care about Mom or the company, you could at least take a call." I read it once, then again, then I closed my laptop. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt distance. The kind that comes when you finally realize someone isn't reaching out because they understand what they did, but because the consequences have arrived. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Falcon. Not to warn them, not to interfere, just to ask questions. The project manager on the line recognized my voice instantly. She sounded tired, but relieved to hear from someone who spoke in specifics instead of slogans. "If Dorsey can't stabilize next quarter," she said carefully, "we'll open the scope to competitive bids. The RFP is already drafted." My pulse didn't spike, it steadied. That night, I pulled out a notebook, the same kind I'd used for years, and started sketching something new. Not revenge, not exposure, strategy. 2 days later, my grandfather called. I hadn't spoken to him in years. After my father passed, he'd receded into quiet retirement, sharp but distant. "I hear Brandon's running the company now," he said without preamble. "He is." "Poorly," he replied flatly. "I still get board memos. They read like marketing copy." I almost laughed. "I remember when you were 15, he continued. "You redesigned the warehouse layout for a school project. Saved us money when we implemented it." I froze. "You used that?" "I did. Never told you. Thought praise made people lazy." For the first time in months, my throat tightened for a reason that wasn't pain. "I didn't start this company to watch it rot," he said. "If you're building something, I want to know." That was the moment the plan crystallized. Not to destroy Dorsey Precision, not to humiliate Brandon, but to build something better and let gravity do the rest. I called Marcus first. If I made this real, I asked funded structured, would you leave? Yes, he said without hesitation. And the others, I can get 5, the ones holding on because they're scared. Next, I called a project manager who'd left quietly months earlier, then a designer, then an engineer. One by one, the answers came back the same. I'm in. I've been waiting. Tell me when. While Brandon spiraled, I drafted a proposal. Clean. Clear. Leaner than Dorsey's last quote by 12%. No grand promises, just timelines, accountability, and deliverables grounded in reality. I submitted it under one name, Redline Advisory Group. No flourish, no explanation. Then I waited. Somewhere between that submission and the silence that followed, I realized something profound. The crown hadn't been stolen from me. It had slipped because it never fit him in the first place. Falcon's response came on a Friday morning. No dramatic subject line, no exclamation points, just 6 words that stopped my breath for a moment. Redline Advisory Proposal approved. I read it twice. Then a third time, slower, letting each word settle. This wasn't just a contract. It was the contract, the same one I'd fought to secure for Dorsey, the one Brandon had mishandled, the one my family had insisted I was no longer needed to manage. Now it belonged to me. I didn't celebrate. I didn't call anyone. I closed my laptop, poured myself another cup of coffee, and stood by the window, watching the city wake up. The feeling wasn't triumph. It was alignment. Like a long, dislocated joint, snapping quietly back into place. By Monday, the ripple effects had begun. A procurement manager I used to mentor reached out privately. Is it true you're handling Falcon now? I didn't dodge it. Yes. Her reply was a single stunned emoji followed by, that explains a lot. 2 days later, Marcus walked into my newly leased downtown office, not as a visitor, but with a box in his hands. I gave notice, he said simply. Brandon told me to clear out by lunch. I smiled. Welcome to Redline. Behind him came Laura, then 2 engineers, then a designer. Not poached. Rescued. People who'd been holding their breath, waiting for proof that there was another way. Meanwhile, Dorsey Precision went quiet. No emails, no legal threats, no public statements, just silence. And in our industry, silence is louder than any press release. Vendors tightened their terms. Clients shortened contracts. Trust evaporated. Brandon tried to pivot. I saw the LinkedIn post 3 days later. Sometimes growth comes from loss. Grateful for lessons learned. 6 likes, no comments. That same week, a small industry journal ran an article. From internal to independent, how one advisor quietly claimed the year's biggest contract. They didn't name Dorsey. They didn't name Brandon. They didn't need to. When my mother called, I almost didn't answer. Her voice sounded tired, softer. I may have made a mistake, she said finally. With Brandon. With you. I listened, didn't interrupt. The board asked him to step down, she continued. We're restructuring. I didn't feel vindicated. I felt finished. I'm sorry, she said. Truly. I believed her. Too late but sincere. The next morning, I unlocked the Redline office and stepped inside. Our logo was etched into the glass now. 12 people worked there, focused, capable, calm. I hadn't burned a single bridge. I'd simply built one better. And when people crossed it, they didn't look back.